Hello and welcome everyone to DRJ's webinar series. I am Bob Arnold, President here at Disaster Cover Journal. Today's sponsor is Ascent Business Technology, and today's topic is Achieving Agile Resilience Through Technology. Before we get started, I want to review a couple housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded. This recording will be shared with everyone tomorrow via an automated email. Attendees are also in a listen-only mode. If you'd like to ask any questions, please use the question panel you will locate on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll answer as many of these questions as possible at the end of the session. Now back to today's session on achieving agile resilience through technology. Our presenters today are Kundan Chakravat and Shashi Van. Kundan is the founder and CEO of Ascent Business Technology, a leading risk and resilience software firm. He has over 2 decades of experience in business continuity, technology, risk, and resiliency management. He is the chief evangelist and brain behind the renowned Autoresilience software suite, recognized by Gartner and Forrester. Recently being awarded Best Continuity and Resilience Provider in the Middle East by the BCI. He is a frequent speaker and thought leader in various forums in resilience management. Shashi is the Director of Growth Strategy at Ascent Business Technology and Autoresilience. He has a 20-year career reshaping and fortifying organizations globally and leading digital transformations in business continuity, crisis, risk, and resilience. His expertise is in steering through crises and architecturing enduring resilience programs. He has led the operational resilience for top banks across the globe. And with no further introductions, I'd like to now welcome and turn it over to Kundan.
Thank you, Bob. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon to all the fellow resilience professionals. Very excited to be here, and the topic is very, very close to our heart as an organization, personally to me. My career has been mostly in resilience. Resilience is a word and a terminology that has kicked in last couple of years. Earlier, of course, the entire business continuity management segment has evolved into what resilience is today. Let me start with where we live in the world today. Truly a digital and interconnected world. I think all of us understand the daunting challenges in the resilience ecosystem all around us in a day-to-day life of where we work, how we see people, how countries and economies are dealing with it. Today's an hour that we're going to spend today will deep dive into some of the aspects of agile resilience and agile technology resilience. Here are some of the facts. If you look at it, the annual cost of dealing with cyber attacks is going to skyrocket to a $10.5 trillion annually. That's quite a number. That's bigger than some of the country's economy in total. And nearly 70% almost of the organization experience and endured supply chain disruptions, and it's going to go more with how we see the world shaping up. Of course, natural disasters are very familiar, known around the world, and that contributes to at least more than $190 billion in economic losses. At the wake of pandemic, we all experienced the amount of job losses, but in the tune of certain facts from the reports, it was more than 255 million job losses all around. Now, that makes us rethink resilience. That makes us look at what is resilience, what's going to happen to it. And we are not even touching upon what is the world going through right now, a second war situation. At the back of this, I think the entire topic of agile technology resilience, while we all want to learn about it, we will stick to our experiences. I have Shashi, my colleague in here, to talk about some of the experiences that he has with customers, what we are doing in this space. Shashi, I'll come back to you on the next slide, talking about what is agile resilience. If you would, tell our fellow attendees, people, explain what that means to you.
Thank you, Kundan. Hello, my fellow resilience professionals. Thank you, first of all, for joining this webinar. To start with, before we delve into agile resilience, let's break down agile resilience into two parts. First part, agile. So this term has been used in the industry so often. There is Agile project management, there is Agile program management. So this is a term that emphasizes on ability to change yourself and continuously learn to adapt to changing conditions dynamically and rapidly. Similarly, resilience is a term that can be used synonymously to business continuity or risk at many countries and many geographies. But resilience by itself is the ability of the organization to quickly uh, recover from the disruptions and disasters, not only just recover, but thrive in a disruption. That's resilience. Now, when we combine these two terms, agile resilience, it's an organizational approach that combines the principles of agility and resilience to help businesses and institutions effectively adapt to and recover from the disruptions and challenges and uncertainties. It mainly emphasizes the ability to navigate change, whether it is triggered naturally by natural disasters, pandemics, or cyber attacks, or geopolitical situations that we face today. Kundan, you want to add more to agile resilience?
I think when we look at the whole piece of resilience, crisis, continuity management, or pick up the risk management aspects of the whole resilience, and this, of course, it's going wider and wider with the geopolitical situations, with the sustainability, with all the different things that are happening around the world. You know, when a crisis does happen, from an agility, I don't think the resilience needs a plan, or resilience can be handled with a crisis. It's the agility which decides the core foundation of how resilient one is as an organization, as a business, as an economy, or a country. Now, the pillars to technology, of course, is no more, you know, a standard industry. It cuts wider across everything that we do today's DNA. And technology plays a very, very key role in ensuring there's an agility embedded into resilience. So thank you, Shashi, for that. As we move into the resilience by recovery versus resilience by design, I think these are some of the principles you know, adopted by mostly the larger regulators in a certain industry segment. And I'll touch a few of those in the financial sector, which is call it as operational resilience. Of course, there are many, many more, but then that's something closest to which says, hey, are you resilience by design? You know, how do we ensure as businesses, as organizations, that we don't land up into a situation or crisis, or if you do, then what is the ability to recover and bounce back in spite of a setback? That's resilience by recovery. So you do recover because you're designed to recover. You go through a setback, but then you do recover. So you fail, but then you do come back after that break. But resilience by design, on the other hand, is like building a strong bridge that doesn't break or that never breaks. It's about making things stronger from the start so that they can handle challenges without, you know, falling it apart. It's all about being ready for whatever comes your way, rather than just fixing the problem after they happen. Some very simple example, and I do talk about that. As human beings, as people, we do fall sick, right? And we go to a doctor. What do? We all know if we don't have to fall sick, you know, we eat well, we have a healthy lifestyle, but that's by design. You know, it's a similar approach to how we see a resilience by recovery and design. But Shashi, feel free to add it as we move on.
Sure, Kundan. I think speaking of agile resilience, let's touch upon the components in the agile resilience. So what makes it agile resilience so different than the recovery strategies that we have in business continuity or just a regular resilience program? So these are the key components or elements of the agile resilience, and we can look into each and every one of them. And the first one is adaptability. So for calling yourself your agile resilient, or you're running an agile resilience or operational resilience program, the first aspect is the flexibility. So it is in your approach to various situations. Maybe the strategies, processes, operations, they change dynamically, and you have to modify your plans, your strategies according to the change that is thrown at you. And prioritization is the second aspect, second component of the Agile Resilience, and it refers to the process of mainly identifying and ranking your most crucial and high priority aspects. Some resilience programs look at the top priority services that your organization offers or product it offers, or at the business continuity level, at the services level or a process level. So, but irrespective of what level you're prioritizing, prioritization is really critical for you to identify what to recover first, right? So there are different programs in the world today. ISO 22301 is a business continuity program. And if you look at operational resilience, it is more focused and emphasis is more on impact tolerance. If you take either approach, your prime focus is prioritizing your organization's most important aspects, right? So, and next, it's an iterative planning. So any resilience program without an iterative learning and implementing that learning back into your planning is not, I would say, is enough resilience program. So as part of your iterative planning, you learn, right? There are different methodologies that are already established in the Agile, like Scrum or Kanban. So these are all principles that are designed to learn in an iterative basis and implement these learnings back into your plans. And as part of this iterative planning, you do test. So whatever you plan, whether it is a disaster recovery plan or a business continuity plan or a risk assessment mitigation plan or a control plan. So you test these scenarios, these plans, and learn from them, and you put your learnings back into that plan. So there is a very fine trade-off between how frequent you want to run these tests and how frequently you want to adapt or incorporate these changes back into these plans. So that's again a call that you have to take at an organization level to see the optimal iterative cycle at which you want to test, learn, and implement that learning back into your plan. Similarly, in today's environment, most of the organizations like work in silos, which can be a real threat at the time of a disaster that was not anticipated. So cross-functional collaboration is really critical for Agile Resilience. Teams working in different departments, working in different locations. If you are dependent on communication tools, what if the communication tool goes down because of a disaster? How does your cross-functional collaboration work? It's about simulating these activities and learning and implementing back with a plan A, plan B, plan C. Similarly, rapid decision making. It's really critical for Agile Resilience. Some organizations may implement their resilience program on a manual basis. So those kind of programs, it's hard for them to really get the right insights to make the right decisions, and also distributing the decision making channels. What if the decision making channel itself is interrupted? So you have to distribute and make sure the decision making control lies with multiple points so that it doesn't fail at one point. And crisis management, technology integration. This is an aspect that is really critical in today's world. Everything is dependent on technology, and whether you are dependent on it for communication or interacting with your departments or with customers. So if technology is down, most of the businesses, I would say, are at real threat. So we have to ensure, and a lot of these, we have to ensure that we do have disaster recovery plans, data recovery plans, right information security and cyber security in place, so that you're well prepared for disasters that can really interrupt your technology and how well you integrate your technology into your functions with ability to absorb the impact of a catastrophic event is is a good measure of seeing where you are in terms of agile resilience.
Shashi, if I may ask you a small question about your rapid decision-making experience that, when you do go out and talk to a lot of industry leaders, resilience professionals, and customers, how do you see the generative AI impact on the rapid decision-making, or how does this whole technology piece go down into supporting, leveraging, helping organizations in the rapid decision-making? Earlier it was a crisis decision-making, but a resilience decision making is larger, which has at the back end sitting with integration data points. Everything is open source. You plug in APIs, there's data flowing around. How does that piece, when the organizations or a Fortune 500,000 sitting around the world is not just cross-functional, cross-jurisdiction areas, people stuck up in countries of affected area in war, affected areas of natural calamities, or some other functioning areas. So how does the integration cross-jurisdiction help in the rapid decision making?
That's a very good question, Kundan. I think I would say we are living in AI world now. There are tools available today, but most of the decision makers require insights, the right information at the right time at their hands to make the rapid decision making. So time is really critical during a disruption, and there are a lot of tools available that are integrated with AI and generative AI, like bots sitting on the networks, listening on social medias and news that can trigger an alert, a threat alert, before that threat actually hits your organization. There are generative AI tools that can be integrated into resilience platforms that can simulate cyber attacks. And you can practice these decision makings during these simulations for a better preparation and planning. And also there are tools right now that are available that can predict supply chain disruptions based on the historic data of your supply chain vendors. There are third-party supply chain vendor risk rating tools available that can actually give you who are the vendors that you're working with that are most susceptible for a risk or a threat. And when you have all of this information in hand, you can easily identify what are your high risk areas and prioritize them and prepare a plan to mitigate them, right? There are also tools that are available that can optimize your shipping routes to minimize the disruptions and reduce the cost. So there are AI plugins that you can integrate into your resilience platforms, like AI tools with IoT integrations, and also resilience platform itself. Like in today's world, there are resilience platforms that can comply with ISO 22301, that can comply with UK operational resilience, FFIEC US standard, multiple standards, because organizations are scattered across different countries. And if they want to maintain a resilience program across all these countries, you want to probably go for a program and methodology that aligns with all these regulations, because ultimately any disruption at any of these locations will impact your business. So incorporating any of these AI integrated resilience platforms or Gen AI integrated resilience platforms would really help in building your resilience program in a way that you can better handle decision making in a rapid and an effective way. Move to the next one. Moving on, again, critical factors of agile resilience, it's the pace of change. So today's world is changing so fast that adaptation to those changes is almost mandatory now. And how quick you adapt to that change is really a direct result that you see on the overall organization's outcome. And unpredictability, we have a dedicated slide for it. I'll show you the statistics in terms of how disasters have impacted organizations across the world, including the recent ones, the COVID-19 or the Russia-Ukraine war, or the US banking crisis that we had in March 2023, and the most recent one a couple of days back with Israel-Palestinian conflict. So they may not affect some organizations directly, but there's a direct or indirect effect to every organization, especially if you are in the financial domain, uh, impacting your supply chain, impacting different stocks that are linked to you, impacting your uh, vendors, technologies disruptions, different aspects. And digital transformation. Speaking of agile resilience in congruence to digital transformation, there are certain resilience regulations that are very specifically focused on digital transformations, which one of them is a DORA, Digital Operational Resilience Act, which primarily talks about DevOps. DevOps as a practice is meant for keeping your software up and running without disruptions with most minimal amount of data loss. At the same time, operational resilience under DORA Act uh, emphasizes more on how do you lose actually not just minimal but almost null data for critical financial institutions, because any financial data loss can be really adverse for an organization. So how do you anticipate digital threats? How do you simulate digital cyber attacks? How do you prevent yourself? How do you respond to it? And DORA Act is something that most of the organizations in Europe are compliant to, but that's something that's really a critical factor in maintaining your agile resilience program. And of course, we talked about global interconnections. Yeah, this is an interesting aspect. So this slide, I call it the A theory of agile resilience. So we call it A theory because these are the 5 attributes. If you assess your organization with these 5 attributes, you pretty much know where you stand in terms of your program's maturity level. And the first one is adapt. So when we say adapt, it's the ability of the organization to adapt to the changing conditions, whether it is a disruption or a cyber attack or any adverse scenario. So I'll give you an example here. If you look at a retail store during COVID-19, I don't want to name a retail store, a lot of retail stores or some of the retail stores adapted from in-person sales store to an e-commerce, right? If an organization like a retail store is not prepared to make that migration from in-person sales store to an e-commerce, those would fail in a situation like this. So being prepared and also adapting to the changing conditions of the industry in which you are in is a real attribute that can assess your maturity of your agile resilience. Similarly, anticipation. So you may not be able to anticipate everything, but based on the industry in which the organization operates, you should be able to identify the risks, threats, and assess the impact of those risks and threats on your organization, and do a thorough risk assessment, mitigation, and control planning. And also agile resilience talks about it's not just anticipation but preparing. So how often do you run those controls or check the controls and make sure that your organization is well in threshold levels to handle those threats, right? I can give you an example of an airline industry that I worked with. So this airline industry has implemented an agile resilience program that can actually detect weather alerts before weather incident happens, they integrated with certain tools like AccuWeather, where it will trigger that alert so that you are well informed, well in time, so that you can reschedule the flights or book accommodation for your passengers or inform your passengers, which results in a better customer experience, which results in more sales for that organization, right? And the third attribute is absorb. It's about taking the impact of a disruption without a catastrophic loss, right? The loss can be in terms of people, in terms of revenue, in terms of profit, it can be anything, but absorbing, being able to absorb that initial impact when you're hit with a crisis is really impact. So a lot of organizations call it sustainability period or a recovery time before which you actually go back to BAU, business as usual. But this is really important because the biggest hit an organization takes is the moment when it is hit with an incident, the first hours or the first minutes, right? And aligning your resilience objectives with your organization objectives. It's again a very important aspect because every program requires an investment, especially a program like Agile Investment, which Agile Resilience, which not only involves training your staff, leadership commitment, dedicated resources, time in doing these risk assessments, running these tests, incorporating these learnings back into your plans, maintaining those plans, and adhering to a regulation, right? All of this is a cost and an investment to an organization. So your resilience objectives should align with your organization's objectives so that ultimately the outcome of the Agile Resilience program that you're running is about your organization objectives. Right? And the fifth attribute of the Agile Resilience A theory is the ACT. It's the ultimate attribute for the A theory because it's the action that you take at the time of an incident or a disaster to uh, take your organization back to BAU with minimal amount of loss. So these four factors that can really give you a good assessment of where you are in terms of Agile Resilience maturity levels, which will directly give you a good indication of how well your organization can take a disaster and recover from it.
Wonderful, Shashi. I think these are some of the very, very important critical elements that you've shared. I'll probably pick on from the ACT attribute that you spoke about, and in the whole technology enablement of the Agile, that ACT is what plays a role, which is an action towards the end. While enabling organizations to be resilient, what is needed is a faster decision making, or for organization to know what has happened, which of course one attribute of that is a crisis or a handling of a crisis, but that's way too far-fetched because a crisis would have happened by then. Anticipating a crisis at the back of data analytics, is kind of one of the key drivers that could enable, and of course the way generative AI or the whole automation piece where they talk about bots, these two play a very significant factor in the whole decision making or putting a strong foundation of the Agile resilience. From a scalability of all of that, I think the cyber security, data protection, and the cloud computing does play another strong pillars from a technology standpoint. But largely, when we talk about the whole world of resilience, collaboration, when people are physically not together or they're spread over different function, jurisdiction, collaboration tools do play a very, very significant part of it, which Shashi, you touched upon on it. So, in the what you see in here, right, from cloud computing to data analytics, the AI, cybersecurity, and collaboration, all these tools form a strong bedrock of the technology resilience. Now, these are the components that not only strengthen the technology infrastructure, but also empower organizations to be more adaptable and resilient in the whole dynamic, ever-changing world that we live in today. Shashi, you touched upon on the rising global uncertainties, and
Right.
right from the financial crisis or the SVB crisis to, of course, all the other crises that the world is seeing all around. I do think, and of course, we saw pandemic, the China-US trade tensions, the geopolitical situation, the Ukraine-Russia war. Now, all these are just indications of the global, rising uncertainties. And what we see today, and we're living in a reality, is another war, which is going to have a severe impact on the world. So, in the way the whole resilience, it's not every organization is now forced to have a strategy or a plan ahead of themselves with respect to sustainability. This has become a must have, or an organization have to embed elements of resilience into their day-to-day work environment. Shashi, you may want to expand onto this.
Sure. So if we look at the most recent US banking crisis, there are 3 banks that were shut down: the Silicon Valley Bank and Swiss Bank. But if you look at the impact on this scale, it has an impact on the total assets of about 320 billion US dollars. So these are the 3 that had the direct impact, but there are many that are indirectly impacted. You may call it a global stocks on New York exchange stocks, but we have to consider that we can't sit and assume that disruptions can't happen. And any disruptions at a global level will have an indirect effect on our organization. And being resilient is the only way we can sustain a business or an organization, even in a short term or a long term, right? So I want to show you when you have implemented Agile Resilience program on platforms, you can actually get metrics that can give you all the attributes that Agile Resilience is about. So we just talked about Agile Resilience in terms of incident management or crisis management, artificial intelligence, how that can be integrated into your resilience program for better rapid decision making. We talked about real-time data analytics that can actually help decision makers make a rapid decision and the right decision. So if imagine yourself in the organization as the risk manager, some of you already are, some of you would be. So look at the first chart. So it's basically, other than COVID-19, has your organization had to actively respond to any incident over the past 24 hours, which resulted in deploying dedicated response teams? So this is on a factual data where you can see about 45% had to deploy a response team for the incident about 2 to 5 times in the last 24 months, right? So it's about half of the incidents require, as a risk manager, to deploy response teams about between 2 to 5 times. Similarly, look at this graph, which talks about what scenarios did you mobilize for. This is not only giving uh, an analytical view of the scenarios that your organization is prepared for, but if your resilience platform is integrated with an AI engine that also identifies the gaps, which are the scenarios for which you are not prepared in your industry. So that's an insightful information on which you can make the right decision to prepare for the scenarios that you have already missed. Because if you look at this graph, it talks about data security, where 60% of the scenarios are about data security, and that's what you prepared for. Similarly, cyber, natural disaster, and so on. And the third one, for the incident, how long approximately were dedicated teams mobilized to respond before management was absorbed, management of the incident was absorbed into the business as usual. So this talks about purely the recovery time. So how long do you have to spend your response teams? So again, in here, it's about 40%. You see that the response teams were deployed for about 1 to 2 weeks, right? So based on the historic data, now you can prepare for the future unpredicted events, because history always guides you into future, right? Now, I want to briefly touch upon the standards and regulations in the industry that uh, operational resilience and agile resilience are built on. If you look at US, it's mainly on FFIEC. Similarly, if you look at Canada, it's OSPI and BSIF. And if you look at UK, there's UK Operational Resilience Act. And ISO 22301 is a standard that cuts across all the industries. And if you look at UK Operational Resilience, it's specific to banks, insurers, and financial institutions of UK. Similarly, FFIEC is specific to US for financial institutions like banks and credit unions, while ISO 22301 is a voluntary standard which cuts across all the markets. UK Operation Resilience and FFIEs are mandatory regulatory requirements which are imposed on financial institutions in UK and US. So the reason why I'm covering these three in particular is because if your business cuts across different countries, uh, you need a very robust and comprehensive resilience plan, because ISO 22301 is about business continuity management, risk assessment, planning, testing, documentation in an iterative manner, which is about resilience. But if you go into UK operation resilience that is imposed by PRA, UK PRA, which is Prudential Regulatory Act, it's not only about business continuity, but it's also about scenario testing. Especially it emphasizes impact tolerances on critical services and products being offered or rendered by the financial institutions. And also incident reporting, unlike risk assessment where you identify a risk and do an assessment on likelihood of a risk or an impact of that risk on your organization, you also do collect an incident reporting in a very comprehensive manner. And given an integration with that data, regulators can also predict incidents in future based on the incidents that have been reported by the financial institutions. Similarly, if you look at FFIEC, which is a UK regulatory requirement on the banking and financial industry, in addition to business continuity, more emphasis from FFIEC is given to information and cybersecurity. It's more about IT risk and disaster recovery plans, identifying not only your critical processes and services of the banking financial sector, but IT is a major aspect of FFIEC, because IT compromise almost takes a banking or a financial sector away. Similarly, if you look at DORA, the emphasis of DORA is on DevOps practices, and the culture itself in when you implement DORA is about reducing the system failures and improving the recovery times of the software systems that are being implemented in your organization. Kundan, you want to add anything to it?
Maybe a little inquisitive about your anticipation part in the earlier slide, which talks about, how does the technology going to anticipate the changing, regulatory scenario? If FIC tomorrow, DORA, PRA tomorrow changes these regulations, are there significant changes to how technology would play a role, or how does organizations, cater to those challenges of changing regulations at the back of changing technology, and of course adapting to the agility in all of it? And I think that's a challenging aspect that you've been talking about.
Right. I think technology has a huge role to play, not just in terms of resilience platform, but it's your resilience platform and the tech infrastructure of the organization's integration with third-party tools, because we are in the AI world, and it's not only an opportunity, but it's also a challenge for resilience professionals to handle the new threats that these AI tools can build, right? In terms of cyber attacks that AI brings in, because there are auto learning platforms, natural language processing platforms that can actually increase the risk of the technology that is being implemented in your institution. But speaking of technology, there are a lot of third-party tools available, and also a lot will be coming in future. But an adaptable resilience platform that is flexible to be integrated into tools like Midcat that listens on social media for new threats. For example, Syrian earthquake. Before the earthquake news broke out in the news, tools like Autoresilience integrated with Midcat have actually triggered those alerts, listening on social media tools like Instagram, Twitter, and these tools operate like, I'll give you an example. So basically, if a word like earthquake is uh, going on Twitter or Instagram or any social media for a million times in a particular region, these tools consider that as an alert and trigger a notification to the resilience stakeholders in an organization for them to immediately act on such threats, because time is really critical in responding to any of these threats that can be uh, identified. Similarly, there are different tools available that can actually trigger these alerts, like weather alerting systems, IoT integrated systems, sensors that can actually detect fire alarms and trigger the response teams, and so on. I hope I answered.
Thank you, Shashi. Bob, I think we're towards the end of the session. We can take up questions from audience.
All right, wonderful. Thanks, guys. And if you do have any questions for Kundan or Shashi, let me just enter those into the question panel you'll find on the right-hand side of your screen. We've had a few come in. Let me dig right in here, jump right in. What is the role of generative AI in Agile Resilience? Can you give some examples of generative AI and resilience automation platforms?
Shashi, I
Sure.
think that's in continuation to the question that I posed for you. Go ahead.
Right. Right. Yeah. So I have covered some of the scenarios here, but I think, as I was saying, we are definitely in the AI world now, and it's only going to increase in future. And today, as we speak of today, there are a lot of AI and generative AI integrated tools that are available that can easily simulate cyber attacks, right? So there were two things. So one is an opportunity that you can simulate the cyber attacks and practice and prepare for these cyber attacks. And the second thing is the kind of challenges that pose for your organization, because these cyber attacks can be triggered by these generative AI tools, right? And bots, right? So you can integrate bots for communication across your crisis management or incident management communication channels, which can minimize human interactions and respond faster and effective. And like I also touched upon two other aspects a little earlier, which is integrations with system, which gives alerts based on the threats that are detected on the social media. And analytics is another aspect. So crisis managers, especially during disruptions, the insights that you provide from your resilience platform is invaluable. So these insights that resilience platforms can provide can be in the form of What is the impact on your organization? What departments, what locations, what staff, what resources, what IT applications? If you can get this impact that your organization had on an incident in the lowest amount of time, that is a valuable information for decision makers to make those right decisions. Similarly, your planning, recovery plans, continuity plans. If your resilience platform can give you or suggest you what plans are, you may have 100 plans in place, but if your resilience platform gives you what are the right plans for the incident that you're currently dealing with, I think that's a valuable asset. And today there are tools like Autoresilience that are available that can actually give you all this information.
All right, next question here. What are the critical success factors for organizations looking to embrace agile resilience through technology?
I can take that up, Bob. I think one of the strongest critical factor is a top-down, of course, which is embracing management support, governance at the top, the seriousness from the leadership to do that. From a technology standpoint, I think investments into technology, first of all, is allocating resources and putting the right investments into technologies. And I don't think there's any shortage of the technology tools. There's all around. What tool would fit into what organization, into what stage of the resilient journey they are in, would play a very critical role in identifying what matters the most. If the organization is at a very early stage of adoption of technology, they can take a leap of it and be far more advanced than some of the other mature resilience program in other competing organizations. Or vice versa, if the programs are already mature, how do they know they are, if the entire program is very sustainable and scalable in that order? So one pillar of technology would be investing into the right tools and resources. And second, of course, the most important, the adoption or the agility of the changing technology landscape. How does an organization quickly adapt to that evolving space? Besides, of course, understanding the whole resilience on its own, which is a practitioner's view, or putting the right teams in place, whether onboarding those people or finding the right partners who can work hand in glove with these organizations to make it happen.
And also one thing I want to add, Kundan, to it, I think whatever you said is absolutely true, Kundan. I think adding continuous improvement is also another aspect because of the changing dynamics of the world. And also one of the things for improvement is about measuring. Unless you measure where you are, you don't really know how to improve and where to improve, right? So measuring, learning from the testing drills, the recovery plan exercises, and implementing those learnings back into your program is really critical. And one of the other aspects that most of the organizations try to minimize is supplier resilience, right? So as an organization, you implement all your plans, but you tend to minimize the importance that you give to a supplier resilience. Most of the organizations are very dependent on suppliers or partners or vendors, right? So today, like, platforms are available that can give you the risk scoring. And as an organization, you can also enforce the resilience programs on your suppliers as part of your SLAs, right? So if all of your suppliers are resilient and you're 100% sure that they're resilient, you are most likely resilient.
All right, next question here. What are the challenges organizations face when transitioning from business continuity to agile resistance or resilience?
I think that's a huge change. That's a big change. The erstwhile business continuity management has evolved into resilience management. And business continuity, even in today's a lot of organizations have been treating that as one of the repository management, having a BCP as a plan, conducting all your business impact analysis and risk assessment over Excel spreadsheets, or maybe some internal tools in Microsoft, or some interfaces. Now, while the BCM is a very strong foundation of the resilience management, it does play a very critical role in assessing an organization's criticality. But then the overarching principles of resilience management, which is layering off, let's start with risk management. Let's take up crisis management aspects of it. Crisis needs a decision point. So, the integrated view to business continuity management, crisis management, risk management, the cyber resilience, IT disaster recovery are some of the, the roadmap or the journey that entails, the pivotal change from business continuity management to a resilience management as an organization. So it's a sea change, a larger view, and, the way chief risk officers evolved at some point in time in early 2000, I think the resilience leaders have taken shape already. Organizations are investing heavily in resilience all across, right from technology to creating plans around roadmap to 3 years and 5 years, and how organization would not just sustain but thrive in challenging time or in case of disasters and crisis. Shashi,
Yeah,
feel free to add.
I wanna do it. So we can also learn from others. So UK financial industry is something that was practicing business continuity, and they transitioned from business continuity to operation resilience, right? So when they did this transitioning, my experience with them is this transition can be complex because in order to learn something new, you have to de-learn what you know. And training the resources that were already practicing business continuity can be tricky, but iterative planning can be challenging, and it relies on real data, tech solutions, and it requires investment. So my suggestion, I would say, is train your staff, your resilience professionals on the operational resilience aspects, agile resilience aspects, and probably adapt uh, resilience software that was proven in operational resilience. Start small or start a pilot program and learn from it and scale it up, and define success metrics so that you can measure it. So that's what I would say.
All right, one final question here. Can you provide insights into the key takeaways from the webinar today that participants can apply in their own organizations?
Shashi, you want to go ahead? I could start off. I think some of the key takeaways for me that I see, I think adoption of technology is of course most important. At the same time, understanding the whole agility scenario or the resilience management scenario is key to organizations. I think the case studies or experiences from other organizations, rather than facing a crisis, you look at how organizations are dealt with in different scenarios are some of the key aspects to the takeaways.
Right. So definitely. So another aspect I would say the key takeaways from this webinar is transitioning from existing business continuity programs to resilience can be tricky, can be complex, but key takeaways is training. Run the training programs across your organizations on the resilience, right? Which incorporates training not only standards like ISO 22301 or 31000, but standards like Operation Resilience, FFIEC standard, and assess your staff ability. Start small. Run a pilot program across a department or a function with the Agile Resilience principles and learn from it. Fix it at that department level, and then you can scale it up. I would say the easiest way is pick a platform that has a proven record in the operation resilience domain, so that you don't have to redefine the methodology and framework and make mistakes while doing so. Because resilience in today's world, across every industry, there are organizations that are practicing it. There are solutions that are available where these methodologies, frameworks are defined. So you can start small, learn from it, scale it up, adapt an existing platform or a program that has already proven in your industry.
All right, wonderful. Well, that wraps up today's webinar here. So I thank everyone for your attendance here today. We hope you gather some great information from today's webinar. I'd like to personally thank Kundan and Shashi for their time here today, as well as Ascent Business Technology for sponsoring today's webinar. We will be emailing everyone a link to the recording. You may view that recording as often as you like or share it with your peers. If you have any additional questions, please contact Disaster Recovery Journal. Thank you again, and this now ends today's webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone.